Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Liv. Today I'll be guiding us through a yoga flow sequence based on back bends, which is probably more appropriately named front body openers. So we're opening and stretching through all the muscles and everything along the front side of the body. So a block would be useful if you have one. You can grab one of those, and when you're ready we're going to come to a kneeling position onto our shins. So if you just widen your knees to be a little bit, so there's a gap between your thighs, sitting onto the tops of the ankle. And then we're going to start by taking the left fingertips behind us. As you inhale, lift your hips off of your heels. Let your chest open towards the sky as you push your hips forwards. Even if it's just a small movement, you're lifting and pushing the hips forwards. Use an exhale to sit the hips back down, switch sides, so right fingertips behind you. Inhale, lift the hips, push them forwards. Turn the chest to the sky as you gaze up. Exhale to sit, to sweep over to the other side. Lift your hips, turn your chest to the sky, reach your right arm up and overhead. The exhale to sit down, sweeping over. Inhale to lift, open through the chest. Exhale to sweep round. One more each side. Left fingertips down. Inhale, lifting the hips, turning the chest to the sky. Exhale to seat. And once more onto the right. Inhale. As you exhale, bring your seat back to your heels and we'll come to a tabletop position. So bring your hands onto the mat in front of you. Shoulders above your wrists, hips above your knees. And as you inhale, drop your belly to the mat, lift your chest and gaze forwards. As you exhale, rounding your spine, tucking the tailbone and drawing the chin to the chest. Inhale again. Use the whole length of your breath to make that whole movement. So you pause at the top of your inhale. And then as you exhale, you round the spine. So you can move at the rate of your own breath here. Inhales, the chest comes forwards, the belly presses down. The exhales to round the spine. Press into the hands. Lovely. Just doing a couple more here. Just warming through the spine. And then come back to a neutral tabletop once you've done your last couple. Tucking the toes behind you. Keeping your hands nicely spread, lift your hips to the sky. Keep your knees a little bit bent as you lengthen out through the shoulders and the chest. Hips to the sky. And finally pressing the heels towards the mat to find downward facing dog. So keeping the shoulder blades nice and broad across your upper back. Your thighs are pressing towards the back of the room. Heels pushing down towards the mat, and also have a sensation of the heels moving away from each other. It's the same feeling as the thighs rolling in towards each other, but the heels slightly press outwards. Now from here with the left leg, as you inhale, send the toes towards the sky, lifting through the leg. Keep the leg as straight as you can. Right heel is staying pressed down towards the mat. As you exhale, bring that foot towards the top of the mat. If you need help to get it to the top of the mat, then place it down, pick it up, put it between the hands, and then lower your back knee down onto the floor. Keeping your front knee tracking on top of your front ankle. As you inhale, lift your torso away from your thigh and send the arms alongside the ears. Let your hands meet above you and squeeze the arms in towards your head, so they're narrowing through the arms. Use the ball of the back foot against the mat to press the hips forwards and down. And also squeezing through your right glutes, your right bum muscle, to help the front of that right hip open up. As you exhale, let the hands come down to the mat. Turn your front foot slightly out to about 45 degrees. You can also widen the leg just a little bit. Untuck your back toes so the top of the foot is onto the mat. Then let this left knee fall away from you. You can use your left hand to encourage the leg to fall away. Lean your chest slightly backwards and drop the right side of your hip down towards the floor, opening into the left hip. Use your breath to find a little bit more comfort here if this feels quite intense. Then roll the foot back onto the mat. Take your hands to the mat, lift your back knee off of the mat. So you're into a sprinter's lunge. The back leg is as straight as you can make it. Pull your chest forwards. Keep your body as long as you can as you drop the hips towards the floor. And then from here, we're going to pick the foot up and step it all the way back into downward facing dog. Great. On the right side, as you inhale, send the toes to the sky. Keep the leg nice and straight. Turn the thigh slightly inwards to keep the hip closed. As you exhale, bringing that foot to the top of the mat between the hands. Pick it up and give it help if it needs to make the whole journey. Drop the back knee down. Keep the back toes tucked, and as you inhale, lift up and away from your thigh. Take the arms alongside the ears. Let the palms meet above you. Keep sinking the hips towards the front edge of your mat, pressing into the ball of that back foot to open through into your left hip flexor. Each time you inhale, feel like you're lifting your ribs up and away from your hips. And as you exhale, allow those hips to sink down. Great. As you exhale, let your hands come back down to the mat, straddling the front foot. Turn the foot slightly outwards, widen the foot slightly, and then untuck your back toes. As you lean towards your left hand, let that right knee fall away from you so the foot is rolling onto the little toe edge of the foot. You can use your right hand, if you like, to gently draw that thigh away from you. But as the right knee falls away from you, we're thinking of the front side of the left hip dropping down towards the mat. You can slightly turn your chest towards the right thigh and breathing into it. Great. Roll the foot back onto the mat. Narrow the stance, hands to go either side of the foot, and then lifting the back leg into the sprinter's lunge. Make sure you're pulling your chest forwards here. So instead of looking down towards your foot, look forwards beyond your mat. Straighten out the back leg as best you can and sink your hips down towards the floor. Take one more inhale here. As you exhale, hands back to the mat. Swipe the foot into your downward facing dog and just take a moment to push into the hands, sending the weight towards the legs, opening across the entire back body, down the back of the legs, down the back of the spine, and into the back of the shoulders. And then from here, with an inhale, we're going to walk the feet into the top of the mat. Keep the hands on the mat as long as you can, coming all the way in, bringing the feet together, and just taking a ragdoll fold for a moment. So soft knees, let the arms dangle or cross the arms. Just working into the hamstrings a little bit, because even though we're opening the front body, it's nice to give everything a more sort of well-rounded approach. Get into the back of the legs as well. And then from here, you're going to keep your knees bent. Interlace your hands together so that your palms, like a basket like this. You're going to place them onto the back of your head and keep your elbows pulled in towards your face. Now keep this rounded sensation in the spine. Think of chin towards your chest, and then roll the spine all the way up to stand, keeping that rounded sensation. Just stretching through the back and coming all the way up to stand, where you can release your arms by your sides. From here, as you inhale, we're going to take some sun salute C's, so it's a little bit different to perhaps what some of you may be used to. So as you inhale, you're taking your arms to the sky, but you're pushing your hips forwards and sending your shoulders back, so it's a real big front body opener. As you exhale, slowly take the hands to the mat as you forward fold. Bend the knees so that your hands can find the floor. On the inhale, halfway lift, chest pulls forwards as your thighs press back. And as you exhale, place your hands to the mat and your right foot takes a big long step back, lower down onto the back knee. So as you inhale, lift up and away from your thigh into your low lunge. And this is maybe where you'll want to use a block. So we're going to take our left hand alongside our hips, either to the block, maybe to the floor if your lunge is particularly low. Left hand onto the block. As you inhale, send your right arm firstly high to the sky. And then with an exhale, let your body lean slightly towards the left as your hips push over towards the right. Keep taking the right arm back towards the ear, trying to prevent closing off and looking down. You're turning the chest to the sky. You're sending the arm behind you as you keep driving the hips towards the front of the mat. Lovely. With an inhale, take both arms up to the sky, palms to meet above you, the hips still driving down. And then from here, we're going to bend the elbows, take the hands to hold either opposite elbows or just a little bit of opposite forearm. And as you squeeze the arms together, also feel like you're pulling the elbows apart. Really, really big upper body stretch. Hips dropping down, lift your chest towards the sky. As you exhale, let the hands come back down to the mat. Lifting your back knee, we're going to step the front foot into a high plank. Keep that tailbone tucked, the thighs drawing in towards each other. And then we're going to lower down through knees, chest and chin. So as you exhale, drop your knees to the mat. Keep your hips pressing high to the sky. We're going to aim the chest towards the thumbs as we look forwards and rest the chin down too. On the inhale, untuck the toes, ripple the belly down, down onto your belly. Floating the chest as you squeeze the shoulder blades and push the pelvis into the mat. As you exhale, tucking toes, rolling via tabletop, hips to the sky and into your downward facing dog. Now from here, we're going to inhale and send the right foot to the sky. So the thigh is rolling inwards to keep the knees and the toes facing the floor. Now, as we exhale, we're going to bend that leg that's in the sky. Think of heel towards bum and now open the hip. So the pelvis turns slightly to the right. Try to keep your upper body exactly as it is for down dog. So there's not much twisting going along in the upper body, but your hips have opened as you reach your right knee to the sky. You're very welcome to stay here, or we're going to work on flipping the dog into wild thing. So that foot that's in the air, you're going to start letting it drop behind you to the floor. Let your shoulders shift forwards as though you're coming towards plank and place the foot down as gently as you can. You're then going to turn your chest towards the sky, push your hips towards the sky, trying to keep your left leg as straight as you can, using that right leg that's behind you to push the hips to the sky. Right arm reaches overhead, stay here for one more breath. On the exhale, we're going to flip all the way back over. Do so with as much control as you can. Right hand comes to find the mat. Now with that right leg that you've just brought over, kick it out under your left armpit. Let your heel slide away from you as you then reopen the chest to the sky, lifting the left hand into your fallen triangle. The left foot is grounded. Push down through the little toe edge of the foot. Right arm is nice and strong to keep you lifted. As you exhale, left hand comes back down and then draw this right leg back onto the mat, right knee to come behind the right wrist, front shin is parallel, we're coming into a seated pigeon pose. So have the knee slightly wider than the hip and the leg is at a diagonal. Unless you have more mobility in your hips, you can start to take that shin more parallel with the front edge of your mat. So from here, and again, a block can be very useful, but we let the back leg run away from us to help the hips sink down. And if there is a gap, which there will be for a lot of us, underneath the right thigh, the right bum, that's where you can take a block, pop it there so you have something to rest on. What we want to avoid doing in our pigeon pose is sitting down into that gap and twisting through the torso. Keep the gap there, pad it up if it's making you feel unsteady, or you can always just leave that little gap there if you're feeling stable and strong in the pose. So taking pigeon pose a little bit differently than perhaps some of you may be used to. Often you walk the hands out and lay over this front shin, but because we're working on our back bends, we're going to stay upright. So let gravity keep helping sink your hips. This front shin, if you think of also pressing it down into the mat, as though you're going to rise up and away from the mat, you'll notice that that right hip stretch intensifies, but that also solidifies your base. Each time you inhale, pick your chest up, sit tall. If there's any room to be had, you can keep bringing your fingertips back towards the body, thinking of trying to stack your chest on top of your pelvis one day, so you're staying nice and tall. Squeeze through your left glute muscle to help push the left front of the hip down towards the mat. Take one more inhale here, open through the chest. As you exhale, let the hands come back to the floor. Let your back knee come in a little bit if you were deep into the pose, and then we're taking the foot all the way back to downward facing dog. Maybe one side of the body feels a little bit different to the other, but don't worry, we're going to work on evening that out. So stay in your down dog just for a couple more breaths. Keep those hips pushing up, the heels pressing down. And then take another inhale, look forwards towards your hands. On the exhale, you can walk your feet, step your feet. Perhaps you want to take a little jump of the feet into the top of the mat. Use the inhale to halfway lift, chest pulls forwards. And on the exhale, forward fold, fingertips to the floor. On the inhale, we're going to rise all the way up to stand, and same as before, the hips are going to push forwards, shoulders go back. See if the hands can meet above you. And on the exhale, once again, taking the fingertips to the floor, bending the knees if you need to, letting the head dangle heavy. Inhale to halfway lift. This time as you exhale, place the hands down, right foot stays at the front of the mat, big long step with the left foot and lower down onto that back knee. As you rise up and away from your thigh, find the sinking in the pelvis first, and then we may need to come to use our blocks. Pelvis drops forwards and down. Our right hand is going to go alongside the hip, either onto the block or the floor. As you inhale, left hand reaches up high first, lengthening the left side of the body. Then as you exhale, lean towards the block. Think of the hips pushing towards the left as the shoulders and the top fingertips lean towards your right. But don't forget about not that you can forget, don't forget about the lunge where you're sinking the hips down, squeezing through the left glutes, pressing into the ball of the back foot. Great, then with an inhale, take both arms to the sky, reaching them up. Send them as far behind your ears as you can. Think of your ribs lifting up and away from your pelvis. And then from here, bending the elbows, seeing if you can hold on to opposite elbows or as close to each other as you can. And then as you hold on tight, you're going to pull the elbows away from each other as though you're trying to separate your grip. Keep pulling the elbows wide, as well as taking the arms as far back towards or beyond the ears as you can. Keep the breathing steady. See if you can match the length of the inhales to your exhales. And then as you exhale, bringing the hands to the mat. Taking the front foot, lift your back knee, stepping it all the way back into a downward facing dog. Take a moment to take some nice deep breaths. Keep the sit bones nice and high, keeping the shoulders nicely open. Now onto the left leg. As you inhale, send the foot to the sky for a three-legged dog. Thigh roll slightly in so that the knees and the toes point towards the floor. And then as you exhale, bend that top knee. Heel pulls towards your bum as your hips open to the side and your knee points to the sky. Really lift through that leg. Try to keep your left shoulder dropping down so that you're still in a nice straight downward dog in the upper body. Always, you can choose to stay here, or if you would like to try Wild Thing, you're going to shift forwards towards plank as you gently guide that top foot towards the floor behind you. Take it as high up towards your wrist as you can, I should say, to help open into your hips. Push your hips up, turn your chest to the sky, reach your arm up and overhead. Trying to find length through your right leg, pushing into the left foot to find lift through your hips. Right arm staying very strong to keep open and tall. Lovely, inhale here. As you exhale, bring that left hand back to the mat. Control yourself coming back over. That left leg, you're then going to sweep underneath the body, under the right arm, kick the foot away from you into your fallen triangle. Right arm reaches high. Point those toes or really just reach through that left leg. Hips are still pushing high, and the little toe edge of your right foot is trying to find the mat. Lovely, inhale here. As you exhale, right hand comes down to the mat. You can pivot onto the back foot, and we're aiming the left knee to just wider than the left wrist. Back knee comes to find the floor. And again, this front shin is on a diagonal to whatever sort of feels appropriate for your hip. If you've not got a stretch, take the foot forwards. Let your back knee wriggle away from you as much as you need to find this stretch in the outer of the left hip. Always that option there to bring the block, place it under your bum to give yourself balance if you're feeling quite wobbly. Keeping the chest nice and upright, staying here in your seated pigeon. Each time you breathe in, pick the chest up, lift up. As you exhale, keep thinking of sinking the hips to the floor. Squeeze through the right glutes. Draw the right hip point forwards. Should be squeezing the muscles that surround your lower spine. As with all back bends or front body openers, if there's ever this bending sensation or shape in your lower back, that should be a strength movement rather than just pushing your body into that shape. So you're squeezing those muscles to help find that lift, find that bend. Then taking one more inhale, keep the chest picking up. And as you exhale, hands to the mat, maybe shuffling the back leg in slightly so that you can swipe the left leg back into your downward facing dog. Great, just take one nice big inhale here. As you exhale, dropping the knees down onto the mat to come towards tabletop. So we're going to move into puppy pose, one of my favourite ways to open into the upper body, part of the heart opener. So keeping your hips on top of your knees and having that same sensation that we found in our cow pose. When we did this shape, the lower body is going to think of doing this shape, but the upper body, the hands will walk away from us. We're sinking the chest down towards the mat and letting the forehead come to rest. If the floor is too far away, you can bring your block and rest your forehead onto the block instead. But you're letting the shoulder blades fall towards each other so the chest can push down towards the mat. Taking some really nice deep breaths. Feel the breath going sideways into the ribs because the body is feeling so expanded in the front, but the breath goes laterally into the side body. If you have a little bit more flexibility in the shoulders, you want to start working away from the forehead towards lifting the chin and looking forwards for the chest to perhaps one day find the mat. Lovely, staying here just for the last couple of breaths. And then walking your hands back in, come to find tabletop. And then coming to sit onto the shins. So I'm just going to move forwards, and you might want to move towards the top of your mat as well. We're going to come into camel pose. So we're going to come to stack up onto the knees. I recommend tucking the toes behind you unless you are comfortable practicing without and you have done so before. Before we go anywhere, I want you to tuck your tailbone and notice how that already gives you a lengthening sensation in the front of the hips here. So tailbone tucks under, that engages our core and keeps everything strong in the middle, opening into the front of the hips. We're going to take our hands to our waist, well, kind of just below where your ribs end. With an inhale, feel like you're picking your ribs up towards the sky. You're lifting your chest, reaching up, up, up. And then as you exhale, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Push the hips forwards as the shoulders reach back and the chest keeps coming up and over. So when we take camel here, we want to think of going up and over rather than back. Now, if you don't have any issues with your lower back and you're feeling strong and supported here, you can release your hands to come to your heels. I'm leaving my chin towards my chest so that I can talk, but you can always release your head back if your neck feels okay to do so. So keep that tuck of the tailbone, that push forwards of the hips, broadening the space between the shoulder heads and breathing into the front of the body. Great, stay for another in-breath. Stay for your out breath. And then with an inhale, take your hands back to your waist, lifting the chest up, untucking your toes and sitting your way back to your heels. If you want to just take a moment to regather your breath, you can place your hands onto your belly and your heart and just allow yourself to Just to find that breath again, particularly if it's ran away from you, which is very common in our back bends. So we're going to do camel one more time, and then we're going to work on a wheel. So for those of you that are a little more advanced, I'm going to give you an option of moving between camel into wheel. If you are quite new to the practice, or you have you've not really tried wheel very much, do not try this transition. I'm going to go through the more basic transition after the more advanced. So we're going to come back up onto the knees for our second round of camel. For the advanced transition, even if you're used to having the tops of the feet on the mat, I want you to tuck your toes just as we did for the first one. So as we inhale, we're going to lift the chest up, pick the ribs up and away from the hips. And as you exhale, hips come forwards, chest reaches up and over, and then we can release the hands to the heels. Now, staying in our camel here for a few breaths. And if you are a beginner, I want you to stay for a couple of breaths and then come out of the pose just the way we did. If you want to work on your transition to wheel, you're then going to take your hands towards your chest. Keep dropping your chest backwards. Let your head drop back until you can start to see your mat. Reaching your arms up and over. Lean towards the mat. Fingertips find the floor, then push into the balls of the feet to lift the pelvis high. You can stay onto the balls of your feet here if it's more comfortable on your back, but you're pushing your chest beyond your upper arms. So staying in your wheel for 5 breaths if you can manage. I'm going to guide anyone that wants to take a more accessible transition. So coming to lie on your backs if you would like to work on your wheel in its own way. Your feet to be hip distance apart, pointing towards the front of the mat. Your hands you're going to take above your shoulders. Fingertips point towards the shoulders. Elbows to stay in towards the body, so don't let them flare out. And it doesn't matter here if the palms of the heel of your hand doesn't quite make the mat, because it will as you transition up to the wheel. So first, as you inhale, lift your pelvis away from the floor and find that tuck of the tailbone again. When you're ready, take a nice big inhale. And as you exhale, press into the hands, keep lifting the hips and lift your chest up and away from the floor. Again, you can keep the heels down if it's more comfortable. I'm very happy for you to lift the heels. But in whatever shape you're in, think of pushing your body weight towards your wrists. So your shoulders, your chest, your whole upper body is moving between your upper arms. Really big opener into the whole front body. Wheel is possibly the biggest front body opener there is. Now to come down out of our wheel, and if you tried the transition, I'm sure you're there already. Chin comes to the chest, bend through the elbows just the way that you went up. Let the shoulders come down, the hips come down, and then just let yourself rest for a moment. You can take your hand again to your belly and your heart. If you want to close your eyes. And then staying lying on our backs, we're going to take our feet as wide as the mat. And just let your knees fall from left to right. Just like windshield wipers. Think of dropping the inner knee down towards the mat as they flop. It's just a way of sort of realigning the spine, wiggling out any tension that might be sticking in there a little longer than we want. Lovely. And then bringing the knees back to center, feet together. I want you to very gently draw your thighs in towards your belly. Maybe take your hands around the back of your thighs or the front of your shins and very softly encourage the legs in towards the body. So this is making the spine do exactly the opposite shape from what we have been doing with it. So be gentle with yourself, and it's just a nice counter pose. You can gently rock from left to right. If that feels nice, it's almost like a little self-massage for your back against the floor. And then I always like to follow my back bending practices with some twists. I just feel it's like wringing out a flannel. It's like taking everything back to square one. So left leg out onto the floor, draw your right knee in towards your chest and give it a squeeze. Let that knee fall over onto the left side of the body. Maybe use a block there if the floor is too far away. And then your right hand to reach out alongside your right shoulder And you can gaze towards that hand as well if that's comfortable for you. Allow your breath to slow down here. I usually practice this pose with my eyes closed, just because it's a closing shape. It's coming towards the end of the practice. You're just trying to let everything slow down a little. And then rolling yourself back onto your back, switching sides, right leg out onto the floor, left knee hugs in towards the chest. As you exhale, knee over to the side, gently let it find somewhere to rest, and then sending your left arm, you can always choose to not add the arms if you've had enough of that, left arm alongside the shoulder, turning your gaze towards that hand. Lovely, then rolling your way back onto your back. You're very welcome to stay here onto your back, taking your Shavasana for a couple of moments to allow your practice to end in complete peace, with a few moments of just sitting with your breath. Otherwise, you can bring yourself up to seat, because that brings us to the end of our practice. Thank you very much for practicing with me today, and Benny, I hope to see you back here soon.